World War II did not start suddenly. It was not a moment of chaos, but a chain reaction, years of anger, ambition, revenge, and fear. And yet, history remembers one single spark, one event that set the entire world on fire. This is the story of how the deadliest conflict in human history began. A story of broken treaties, dangerous leaders, and decisions that pushed nations toward the edge. This is how World War II ignited. To understand why World War II began, we must first return to 1918, the end of World War I. Germany was defeated, humiliated, and forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty demanded enormous reparations. Germany lost territory, lost its army, lost its pride. Millions of citizens felt betrayed. They believed their country had been stabbed in the back. The economy collapsed. Inflation turned money into worthless paper. A loaf of bread could cost a wheelbarrow full of banknotes. In this chaos, anger grew. People wanted a leader, someone who promised to restore power, glory, and revenge. And that is when Adolf Hitler appeared. Hitler was not just a politician. He was a master of speeches, propaganda, and emotion. He promised Germany three things. 1. National pride. 2. Economic recovery. 3. Revenge against those who humiliated the nation. Step by step, he took control. He rebuilt the army. Secretly at first, then openly. He united the people through fear and nationalism. And the world watched, but did nothing. Europe hoped that giving Hitler what he wanted would keep peace. They were wrong. In 1936, Hitler marched his troops into the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone. This was a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. France and Britain could have stopped him. His army was still weak, but they chose to do nothing. Encouraged, Hitler moved faster. In 1938, he annexed Austria. No resistance. Then he demanded part of Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland. European leaders gave it to him, hoping the last concession would prevent war. But Hitler was not looking for peace. He was testing the world. After receiving the Sudetenland in 1938, Hitler promised Europe that he wanted no more territory. But that promise lasted only a few months. In March 1939, German troops entered the rest of Czechoslovakia. There was no declaration of war, no resistance strong enough to stop them. A European country disappeared from the map in a matter of hours. For the first time, Hitler had invaded a nation that did not have any ethnic Germans to protect. This was not unification. This was conquest. Now, Britain and France understood a terrible truth. Hitler could not be negotiated with. Appeasement had failed. Europe was running out of time. Hitler looked toward his next target, Poland. Poland controlled the Polish Corridor, a strip of land separating Germany from East Prussia. The city of Danzig became a symbol of tension, but the corridor was just an excuse. Hitler wanted more living space, Lebensraum, and Poland stood in the way. He believed that Britain and France would not protect Poland. They had not protected Austria. They had not protected Czechoslovakia. Why would they protect Poland? Hitler was confident, but he needed one more thing. He needed to ensure that the Soviet Union would not interfere. In August 1939, the world was shocked. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, two ideological enemies, signed a non-aggression pact. It became known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it stated that the two nations would not attack each other. But secretly, there was more. A hidden protocol divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. Germany would take Western Poland. The Soviet Union would take Eastern Poland, Finland, the Baltic states, and parts of Romania. Hitler no longer feared a war on two fronts. Stalin gained time to rebuild his weakened army. Europe held its breath. A storm was coming. At dawn on September 1, 1939, Germany launched a full-scale invasion of Poland. German planes bombed cities, railways, and communication lines. Tanks advanced rapidly across the borders. The world witnessed a new form of warfare, blitzkrieg, lightning war. Hitler expected Poland to collapse quickly. He was right. But he was wrong about one thing. Britain and France had promised to defend Poland, and this time, they kept their word. On September 3, 1939, both nations declared war on Germany. This was the spark, the moment the world stepped into darkness. World War II had begun. Britain and France declared war on Germany on September 3, 1939. But they did not attack. They did not cross the German border. They did not send their armies to help Poland. Why? First, they were not prepared. Both nations believed they still had years before another war would come. Their armies were slow, outdated, and poorly coordinated. Second, they feared a powerful German counterattack. Their defenses were built around the idea of trench warfare, not blitzkrieg. Third, they hoped that economic pressure would force Germany to negotiate. But negotiations never came. While Britain and France waited, Germany continued to move forward. Poland was fighting alone. On September 17, 1939, another army crossed Poland's eastern border. The Soviet Union invaded, following the secret agreement in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Poland was now trapped between two powerful enemies. Its government fled the country. Resistance was brave but hopeless. By early October, Poland was completely destroyed as an independent state. Germany and the Soviet Union divided the territory between them. The world was stunned. In less than 6 weeks, a European nation had been erased. After defeating Poland, Hitler turned his attention to the West. But instead of attacking immediately, he paused. Germany needed time to prepare for the next phase of the war. Factories worked day and night, producing weapons, tanks, and aircraft. Meanwhile, German forces fortified their defenses along the western border. Hitler believed the Allies would not attack, and again, he was right. Britain and France sat behind their fortifications, waiting for Germany to make the next move. And Germany was getting stronger every day. From October 1939 to April 1940, Europe entered a period known as the Phony War, the Strange War. There were no major battles on the Western Front, no invasions, no breakthroughs. Soldiers waited in trenches and bunkers, listening to the distant echoes of a war that had not yet reached them. Newspapers joked that the war was not real, but it was very real, a silent calm before a devastating storm. Behind the silence, Germany was planning something massive. Hitler had no intention of fighting a long, defensive war. He wanted to conquer Europe quickly, before the Allies could regroup. His generals prepared an ambitious strategy to invade Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and finally, France. The plan relied on speed, surprise, and overwhelming firepower. The strange war was about to end. The real war in Western Europe was about to begin. On April 9, 1940, the silence of the Phony War shattered. Germany launched Operation Weserberg, the invasion of Denmark and Norway. Denmark fell in a single day. Its army was too small, and its government wanted to avoid pointless destruction. Norway resisted, but it could not stand alone. German paratroopers captured key ports, airfields, and cities. The Allies tried to help, but it was too late. By June, both countries were under German control. Now Germany had access to the North Sea, strategic naval bases, secure shipping routes for Swedish iron ore, and Europe understood. Hitler's war would not stop at Poland. Hitler's next target was France. During World War I, Germany failed to defeat France quickly. This time, the plan was different. Instead of attacking through the heavily defended Maginot Line, Germany planned to move through Belgium and the Netherlands, just like in the previous war. But there was a twist. The main strike would come through the Ardennes, a dense forest that the Allies believed was impossible for tanks. Hitler's generals knew the Allies would not expect it, and they were right. On May 10, 1940, Germany attacked. Paratroopers seized bridges and fortifications. Tanks raced across borders. Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg were overwhelmed. The Allies rushed their strongest forces into Belgium, just as Germany expected. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap. While the Allies moved north, German armored divisions pushed through the Ardennes. It was a bold gamble. The roads were narrow. Traffic jams stretched for miles. If the Allies discovered the movement, the entire plan could collapse. But the Allies did not react in time. German tanks reached the River Meuse, broke through French defenses, and advanced with incredible speed. By mid-May, they were behind the Allied armies in Belgium. The trap snapped shut. The Allied armies were surrounded near the coast, trapped around the city of Dunkirk. Defeat seemed inevitable. But then came one of the most dramatic moments of the war. Britain launched Operation Dynamo, the evacuation of troops across the English Channel. Hundreds of naval ships, fishing boats, and civilian vessels crossed the water to rescue soldiers. Under constant German bombing, they evacuated more than 300,000 men. It was not a victory, but it was a miracle of survival. Those rescued soldiers would later form the core of Britain's defense. After Dunkirk, France fought on, but the situation was hopeless. German forces advanced toward Paris. Cities surrendered one by one. The French government fled. On June 14, 1940, German troops entered Paris without resistance. 6 days later, France officially surrendered. In just 6 weeks, Germany defeated one of the strongest armies in Europe. It was a stunning victory that shocked the world. By the summer of 1940, almost all of Western Europe was under German control. France, defeated. Belgium, occupied. The Netherlands, occupied. Norway and Denmark, controlled by Germany. Only one major nation remained free, Britain. Hitler believed Britain would negotiate, but the British government refused. They would not surrender. A new and deadly phase of the war was about to begin. The Battle of Britain. After the fall of France in June 1940, Hitler expected Britain to surrender. But Britain refused. To invade the island, Germany needed control of the skies. Hitler launched Operation Sea Lion, a plan to destroy Britain's air force and prepare for an invasion. The first phase began in July 1940. The German Luftwaffe attacked British ships, radar stations, and airfields. Wave after wave of bombers and fighters crossed the Channel. Britain had fewer planes, fewer pilots, and fewer resources. But they had something else. The Royal Air Force, the RAF, was fighting for its homeland. When the British bombed Berlin in late August, Hitler was furious. He changed his strategy. Instead of attacking air bases, he ordered massive air raids on British cities, especially London. This phase became known as the Blitz. Night after night, London was bombed. Homes collapsed. Streets burned. Families hid in underground shelters while explosions shook the city above them. But the British spirit did not break. People continued to work, rebuild, and resist. Prime Minister Winston Churchill said, "Never was so much owed by so many to so few." Hitler believed that bombing cities would force Britain to surrender. But this was a major mistake. By shifting focus from RAF airfields to civilian bombing, Germany gave the RAF time to recover. British fighter bases repaired runways. Pilots rested. Aircraft factories increased production. Germany underestimated Britain's radar system, a new technology that helped the RAF track incoming attacks. Hitler also believed the RAF was near collapse. It wasn't. There were several reasons Germany failed in the Battle of Britain. 1. British radar gave early warnings. 2. The RAF fought over home territory. Shot down pilots could return to battle. 3. German fighters had limited fuel over Britain. 4. Bombing cities instead of airfields weakened Germany's advantage. 5. British aircraft production was stronger than expected. On September 15, 1940, the Luftwaffe launched a massive attack. The RAF resisted and shot down dozens of German planes. This day became known as Battle of Britain Day, and it marked Germany's defeat. By October 1940, Hitler realized that he could not gain air superiority. Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, was postponed and eventually cancelled. Britain stood alone, but it survived. This changed everything. For the first time, Hitler's forces were stopped. A powerful message spread across the world. Germany could be defeated. The Battle of Britain became a turning point in the early war. After failing to defeat Britain in 1940, Hitler changed direction. He believed that Britain resisted only because it hoped for help from the Soviet Union or the United States to force Britain into surrender. Hitler imagined a new plan: destroy the Soviet Union. Hitler saw the East as a vast land of resources, farmland, oil, and millions of people he considered inferior. He believed conquering the USA would give Germany everything it needed to rule Europe. His generals warned him, fighting Britain in the West and the Soviet Union in the East at the same time was dangerous. But Hitler was confident. Too confident. In late 1940 and early 1941, Germany secretly prepared the largest invasion in human history. The plan was called Operation Barbarossa. Germany gathered more than 3 million soldiers, over 3,500 tanks to 2,700 aircraft, hundreds of thousands of trucks, artillery pieces, and supply vehicles. 3 giant army groups would attack: north toward Leningrad, center toward Moscow, south toward Ukraine and the Caucasus. Hitler believed the Soviet Union would collapse in a few months. He underestimated everything. At dawn on June 22, 1941, Germany launched a surprise attack on the Soviet Union. Bombers destroyed airfields and communication centers. Tanks crossed the borders at incredible speed. Millions of Soviet soldiers were caught by surprise. Germany advanced hundreds of kilometers within weeks. Entire Soviet armies were encircled. Cities fell one after another. Millions of soldiers were taken prisoner. Hitler believed victory was close. But there was something he did not expect. The Soviet Union did not collapse. The invasion caused catastrophic losses for the Soviet Union. By autumn 1941, more than 3 million Soviet soldiers were captured. Thousands of tanks and planes were destroyed. Huge territories were lost, but despite the disaster, the Soviet Union continued to resist. Factories from the West were moved hundreds of kilometers into Siberia. Reinforcements arrived from deeper regions. New armies were formed again and again. The German army advanced quickly, but its supply lines stretched thin. By October 1941, German forces reached the outskirts of Moscow. They believed the Soviet capital would fall before winter, but the weather turned brutally cold. Mud slowed the tanks. Equipment failed. Soldiers froze. The Soviets launched a counter-offensive in early December. Fresh troops from Siberia, trained for winter, attacked the exhausted German armies. Germany was pushed back from Moscow. For the first time in the war, Hitler's armies suffered a major defeat on land. In 1941, the United States was officially neutral. Most Americans did not want to join another European war, but President Franklin D. Roosevelt understood the danger. If Britain fell, Germany would dominate Europe. If Japan expanded in Asia, American interests would be threatened. So America began to support the Allies indirectly. Through the Lend-Lease program, America sent weapons, food, ships, and vehicles to Britain and the Soviet Union. The United States was not in the war yet, but it was getting closer every month. While Europe was burning, Japan was expanding in Asia. Japan wanted resources: oil, rubber, metal, everything needed for a modern army. It invaded China, occupied French Indochina, and clashed with Western powers. The United States responded with economic sanctions. Most importantly, America cut Japan off from oil imports. Japan faced a choice: back down or strike before the United States could stop them. Japan chose war. On the morning of December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor, a major United States naval base in Hawaii. It was a surprise assault. Battleships exploded. Airfields burned. More than 2,400 Americans were killed. The attack shocked the United States. The next day, America declared war on Japan. Germany and Italy, Japan's allies, declared war on the United States. The conflict was no longer a regional war. It had become truly global. World War II had reached every corner of the planet. In 1942, Germany launched a new offensive on the Eastern Front. Hitler shifted his focus from Moscow to the south. The goal: capture Soviet oil fields in the Caucasus. Oil meant power. Without Soviet oil, Germany believed the USSR would collapse. German armies pushed deep into southern Russia. They captured vast territories and approached the Volga River. But one city blocked their path, a city whose name would echo through history: Stalingrad. Stalingrad was not just a city, it was a symbol, named after Stalin himself. Hitler wanted it captured at any cost. Stalin ordered it defended at any cost. The battle began in the summer of 1942. German bombers turned the city into ruins. Streets, factories, and houses became battlegrounds. Every building, every staircase, every room was fought over. Soldiers described it as hell on earth. The Soviets defended Stalingrad with incredible determination. Snipers hid among broken walls. Machine gunners fought from basements. Soviet soldiers crossed the Volga under constant fire, just to reinforce the defenders. The Germans captured most of the city, but they could not break the last pockets of resistance. Hitler demanded victory. He refused to retreat. But winter was coming. In November 1942, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus. They didn't attack the city. They attacked the weaker Romanian and Italian forces protecting the German flanks. The maneuver worked perfectly. Within days, the entire German Sixth Army, more than 250,000 soldiers, was surrounded. Hitler ordered them to hold their ground. He promised they would be supplied by air. The Luftwaffe tried, and failed. By early 1943, starvation and cold destroyed the trapped German forces. Their supplies were gone. Their wounded froze in the ruins. Their ammunition ran out. On February 2, 1943, the remaining German units surrendered. It was one of Germany's greatest defeats. Stalingrad marked a turning point. From this moment, Germany was no longer advancing. It was retreating. After Stalingrad, Germany was no longer advancing. By 1943, the Axis powers were losing ground on every front. In North Africa, Rommel's Afrika Korps was exhausted. Outnumbered and short of fuel, their supply lines were cut, and their tanks ran low on ammunition. El Alamein shattered the Axis momentum, and forced a long retreat across the desert. In November 1940, two Allied forces landed in North Africa. American and British troops pushed ashore, joined local forces, and began a relentless campaign. By May 1943, the last German and Italian units in Tunisia surrendered. The Mediterranean was open to the Allies. The defeat in Africa weakened Italy. In July 1943, Allied forces invaded Sicily. Mussolini's government collapsed and the Italians surrendered. German divisions rushed into Italy to hold the peninsula. But the Allies had already opened a new and bloody front. While fighting continued in Italy, Allied planners in England prepared for a larger blow. Massive armadas of ships and thousands of aircraft were assembled. Soldiers trained on mock French villages. Supplies and vehicles piled up in ports across southern England. Eisenhower and the Allied command studied weather, tides, and defenses. Plans for the invasion of Normandy Operation Overlord were finalized. The goal was clear: establish a Western Front and liberate continental Europe. Elsewhere, the Axis were losing ground. In the Atlantic, Allied anti-submarine tactics and air cover reduced the U-boat threat. In the Pacific, American forces pushed back Japanese advances. On the Eastern Front, the Red Army reorganized and prepared new offensives. By the end of 1943, the strategic balance had shifted. The Allies held the initiative. The tide of war had turned. By 1944, the Allies were ready for the final push. On June 6, D-Day, thousands of soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy. Explosions shook the coastline, and courage met terror. Slowly, the Allies gained a foothold in France, pushing back the German army. Meanwhile, the Soviets launched massive offensives in the east. Cities that had suffered under occupation were liberated. The Red Army advanced relentlessly, forcing the Germans to retreat toward their own borders. In the skies, the Allies dominated. Planes filled with bombs and fighters cut off German supply lines and destroyed key cities. Submarines and ships controlled the seas, making it impossible for Germany to move troops or resources. By the spring of 1945, the war was collapsing for Germany. Allied forces approached Berlin from west and east. The streets of the capital became battlefields. On May 8, 1945, after years of unimaginable suffering, the German government surrendered. Europe was free. In the Pacific, fierce battles raged until August. Cities were devastated, and the cost of victory was immense. Finally, Japan surrendered after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. World War II had ended. Tens of millions of lives were lost. Cities lay in ruins, and the world would never be the same. But from the darkness came hope. Nations rebuilt, alliances formed, and lessons were learned, lessons that still echo today. This was the war that changed the world forever.